I got to tell you, my younger son, Max, had prom last night, and I was absolutely delighted. Yeah, it was prom night here in Philadelphia. I just realized the irony of this. They had it at a place called the Please Touch Museum.
Oh God!
It's actually it's a great Philadelphia place. It's actually a place for small children, and it's kind of like a science-y museum full of activities.
Sure, a hands-on place, yeah.
Because every time you take every time you take a kid to a museum, there's signs saying "Please do not touch."
Yeah,
right, which is terrible for a kid. So this was the Please Touch Museum. It's in an amazing space, an amazing location. But I just realized the connotation for prom was a little bit weird. But you know, I got to tell you, you know how sometimes you live. Even if you try not to, you live a little bit vicariously through your kids.
Oh, sure.
And I saw my kid going out to prom with a whole group of friends. Like not one person that he was particularly sweet on, just a whole bunch of kids that got together, dressed up. My kid had a gorgeous dinner jacket with like a paisley design in it. He looked incredible. But just went out with a whole bunch of friends, and they just had an amazing time all night, dancing and partying and doing all kinds of stuff. And I'm never going to be the guy that lives vicariously through sports achievements. I'm never going to be that person. But oh my God, what I wouldn't have given to have the circle of friends that both my kids do, quite frankly. They both have an amazing circle of friends. But what I wouldn't have given for that experience, to have that kind of friendship at the high school level, where you just go out and have a great time at prom with a whole bunch of friends.
First of all, that's great. What a great moment. What a great sentiment. And I'll tell you, Gloria and I have kind of the same thing with ours, where we've talked about that. We've actually vocalized this to one another, is that we just want to raise happy nerds.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Just happy nerds. That's a great way to go through life, is just be a happy nerd. It's almost like a joy-filled warrior for geekdom and being with pals, and like not trying to. You're not living an egotistical life. You're living a life of curiosity and friendship, and that's what I want to raise, is kind nerds, you know?
Yeah, I said the same thing to Carol, and I used that Lake Wobegon reference. I said, I just want them to be above average. I don't want them to be dumb, and I don't want them to be gifted, right? And just as bad about being as dumb as being gifted, right? I wanted them to be above average, but not gifted.
You don't want, why would you not want them to be gifted?
Because I've seen so many people who were prescribed as gifted at middle school and high school, and then go out into the world and just get their butt kicked because the world is much bigger than that little high school classroom.
I don't know. I mean, I was able to make hay out of it with my life.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was talking to one of the. What would you be then? Previously gifted? Currently gifted? What are you?
Listen, Mozart in his childhood gifted. Mozart in his adult life gifted. Dave Kellen, I feel like much the same pattern.
Well, listen, if we're going to keep talking about this, maybe we better wrap it up and start the show.
On that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about giftedly making comics.
See, because rapping, you wrap a gift.
Oh, see what I did there? Didn't even notice it.
Yeah, well, no time like the present. And making a living from comics, I'm Brad Geiger, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I love how you had to tell the quote-unquote gifted one how language works. And I'm his friend Dave Kellen, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of the comics documentary Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/ComicLab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. We've got an exciting show for everybody. It's a fresh start for the month, which means all of our best questions are coming in from Comic Lab folks over at patreon.com/ComicLab. And here is our first one from Ellie. And Ellie writes, hello to the very wise and handsome Dad and Brave. I would like to know how you both started learning how to tell a story. Storytelling seems like complete wizardry to me as a total newbie, and I'm wondering where you would recommend beginning. I've heard there are different story structures. Is that a good place to start? What are your favorite storytelling books or resources to recommend? Thank you so much for all you do, Ellie. So, Brad, Ellie is an illustrator who's always been a comics fan and would like to learn more how to make their own comic stories. What is your advice for Ellie on how you learn how to tell a story?
First things first, Ellie, go find a mirror and tell the person that you see that they are gifted. They are truly above average because
it worked for me.
It it worked for Dave. But no, listen, we say this on the show all the time, that a lot of what holds comics artists back is that they came to comics through art and they don't realize how bad they are at writing. They don't take the time to consider that part of it, right? They don't put the effort in. They just think that it's, hey, I'll put some stuff down here. So first things first, Ellie, you're way ahead of most cartoonists, most comics people, because you realize this is something you need to put a lot of thought and energy into.
Right.
So there's a lot of ways to go about this. I'll tell you my personal journey. Dave will tell you his, and just realize that yours is going to be your own as well. And take it from for what it's worth. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but you're probably going to pick up on a few similarities here. For me, I was that obnoxious 8-year-old who was obsessed with jokes. I loved jokes. I loved learning jokes, hearing jokes, and especially telling jokes. And I would try them out on my friends, my parents' friends, whoever was at the grocery store. And there's a lot of different types of jokes. There's short jokes, there's one-liners, there's limericks, there's riddles, there's long jokes. There's a particular type of joke I love called a shaggy dog story, where the whole point is just being long. There's no real punchline. It's just that your audience realizes that you just wasted their time.
It's almost like a version of the Aristocrats, but
the Aristocrats, I would call that the most famous shaggy dog joke. But so when I started telling jokes orally, I realized that there's a craft to it. There's a pattern. There's a method, and it's all about establishing the situation, giving the people just enough information that they know what's going on, giving it to them in a way that's interesting and always also builds up suspense, and then delivering that punchline at just the right time in just the right way so that it gets that laughed. And it's joke telling is so perfect for this because if you don't get the laugh, you know you did it wrong. And then you learn from that experience. I mean, it's instant feedback. Did you do it right? Well, did you get the laugh? No? Try it again and figure out what you did wrong. And so that was my entire childhood, was telling jokes and learning how a joke worked. Right. And then later on, and by the way, I'd say that also carried me through my first several years of doing a comic strip. It wasn't until later that I started to reimagine my career as a graphic novelist that I stopped thinking about in fact, I am not really a comic strip guy anymore. What I'm doing is much closer to a graphic novel or a comic book. And has been since like 2012. So when I reimagined that, I immediately saw that I had shortcomings. And I started concentrating on what does it take to write a good story, right? And then you start getting into all of these archetypes, like the hero's journey, the 7 stories, the story circle from Dan Harmon. There's a bunch of different ways to look at storycraft and a bunch of different ways to think about it. They all have something that's very similar at the core, which is a protagonist who has a want or a need, but faces an obstacle. And what do they do to get it? And how does that take place? That's really at the core of about 85, 90% or even more of storytelling. Yeah. Right. And so I started studying about how that happened and how you can use those ingredients and how they work together and how that all culminates. to do a story. And then the third part was the more I got into it, the more I became fascinated with storytelling in general. And that meant I needed to start reading. And for me, since reading is not, I simply don't have time to read, but audiobooks became my salvation because I can listen to an audiobook and get that story that way while I'm inking or while I'm doing something else, while I'm driving to the studio, right? If I can hear the audiobook over all the honking, I can listen to that audiobook. And then all of a sudden you can't listen passively, right? You start listening actively, where you think, why am I being told this now? Why is the storytelling telling this now? Why are they telling it this way? And sometimes you go, oh, that was a mistake. I wouldn't do that, right? You start actively listening. And that's why I tell you, read good books and read terribly written books, right? And you can find both very easily. And because you'll learn volumes from each. But that was my pathway. It all started with something I tell my storytelling class all the time. If you want to learn how to tell a story, learn how to tell a good joke.
Do I co-sign that? Without exaggerating it, my storytelling ability was so well grounded by doing 2, 3, 4,000 comic strips first. Because the goal of a comic strip is get in, establish and exposition, get that out quick, build the tension, and then punchline, right? And as Brad says, that's all the elements of a story. You do that a couple hundred times, a couple thousand times, you can't help but get better at seeing what's fluff, what's unnecessary, what can be cut, what absolutely has to be put up there first to establish things. And you just get better at it, right? Yeah. But you might, like Brad said, you might say that I'm not a comic strip person, and that's not for me. Well, there's other ways to do it, and I'll give you maybe 3 options that you can do. The one that I did in grade school, high school, college, and young adult life is practice your storytelling in social settings, and this is a little bit different than Brad's idea of joke telling. This is actually, oh my gosh, you won't believe what happened to me today, right? Yeah. From that moment on, you got everybody leaning in. They want to know what happened to you, right? How well can you carry them through giving them the establishing of the situation, carrying through what is probably the boring exposition, building up the tension, and then the release at the end of either the terrible thing that happened, the funny thing that happened, the denouement afterward, all that sort of stuff is. As Brad said with telling a joke, physically telling a joke to people in their presence, when you are telling a story at a party, you can literally read the room based on body language, based on eye signals, based on shifting around on their feet, based on how they're holding their drink. Are you boring them? You can tell. And that'll let you know, all right, I've got to get to my points faster. I've got to be more engaging in the way I make boring exposition exciting, right? Yes. Oh my God, like, think of every good movie that you've ever enjoyed. The first 15 minutes until we get, and you can time it, the 15-minute point of most movies, at 80 to 90% of movies, the 15-minute point is when the problem is established, right? Yeah. So that first 15 minutes is all about exposition, establishing who the characters are, establishing where we are. A really good movie takes boring exposition and makes it exciting. And that's what you have to do with your storytelling, is you have to make even the boring parts of storytelling exciting. And like Brad said, with joke telling, the more you do it, the better you'll get. You'll cut out the cruft, and you'll realize, much like that old saying, as never let the truth get in the way of telling a good story. Yes. Sometimes a little bit of hyperbole, a little bit of exaggeration, a little bit of unnecessary untruths that make the story better gets sprinkled in. And in so doing, you engage your audience better. You make them more excited to hear what's about to come next, right? So that's number one. The other 2 that I would say are, if these are within the potential of your wheelhouse, number 1 is, if you live near enough to a big city, I would highly recommend taking an improv class, because improv is a great way to learn and train your brain to see many possibilities are ultimately possible here. Commit to one. Now make it work. That didn't work. All right, we're going to try it again in a different scene. Now you're a cop that you're holding a water buffalo. Go, that kind of thing. So whether it's Upright Citizens Brigade, whether it's the Groundlings, whether it's Second City, it doesn't matter who you're taking an improv class from. Take 1, 2, 3 improv classes. I promise you will get better within 1, 2. No one's good at first. Rest assured on that one. And then the third option that I will tell you is that Gloria and I did this when we first moved to LA. And we did stand up in Los Angeles, around Los Angeles, different stand up clubs. And it's funny because, Brad, you'll appreciate this. My wife has been interacting with Eva Longoria recently for something. And she reminded us that the three of us were doing stand-up when we first moved to LA back in the day. So even Eva Longoria, before she did Desperate Housewives, was cutting her teeth trying to figure out how to tell better stories, how to tell better jokes, how to be more performative by doing stand-up, which all credit in the world to her that she was doing that in her 20s and 30s, trying to figure out how to do that. So if that's something that you could do, I was good at it. I wasn't great at it. But it made me a better storyteller. It made me a better joke teller to get up on stage and see what worked in front of an audience.
Yeah. I'll also add this. One thing that helped me, and I'm going to be just blatant about this. One thing that helped me was I was kind of unattractive. All right.
Why did I choose that moment to have a sip of coffee?
You did a Danny Thomas spit take just then.
Oh, God. You damn near killed me.
Well,
I have coffee in my sinuses now. That hurts. Oh, Lord above, Brad. God bless America. That hurts.
Tell me that I'm lying, though, because here's the thing.
No, I'm looking at you on a video screen. I can tell you right now.
Because if you're a little bit unattractive like me, or a lot unattractive like me, you got to be a really good storyteller. And here's the opposite. If you happen to be very attractive, you don't know how bad you are at telling stories because everybody is laughing their ass off at you. They're falling all over
beyond
themselves.
Charmed, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're attractive, you don't know how bad you are at telling stories, probably. But man, if you got a face like this, you got to be able to land a punchline.
Well, I will perhaps course correct you because I want to speak on behalf of my friend, which is Brad and I both are admittedly introverts or maybe ambiverts at best. We are not necessarily outgoing or extroverts, but I've known my friend now for the better part of 20, 25 years. And if you drop Brad in a social setting, I have to tell you, he does know how to turn on the charm in a way that is delightful to behold. He is a great storyteller. He's incredibly engaging. He's very funny. And in so doing, is incredibly suave and debonair in terms of like, it's heartwarming to be in the hands of a good storyteller socially. You know what I mean? So it's pleasurable to be in a party setting or a group setting where Brad is telling a story. It's fun. And I do think there's probably some truth to that, Brad, is that all of us as artists were a little bit introverted, a little bit shy, maybe not the best at sports because we're choosing to draw all the time, right? You know, I was there too with you. And so it is something to celebrate, though, that because we were a little bit shyer, a little bit more introverted, we had to get better at telling stories in order to survive a whole bunch of social settings, right? And I, at least me speaking on behalf of my friend, Brad excels at social storytelling now, probably because he had to cut his teeth for decades the hard way, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something you learn after years and years of doing it wrong. Finally, it's like, okay, yeah, I don't look for those opportunities, but I can do it when I have to.
Exactly.
It also helps to watch people who are a little bit more effortless at it, like my good friend over there. Dave does this effortlessly. Right?
No, that's not true, but I thank you for the compliment.
He makes it look effortless. And so, like a lot of times, when I'm watching Dave at a party, I'm going to be like, I see what he's doing there. I see how he's interacting. I can do that. I could channel a little bit of Dave Kellett. And all of that turns around and makes you a better storytelling too, because you'd be amazed how much of our human existence really boils down to storytelling. Politics is storytelling.
Marketing is storytelling. Advertising is storytelling. Yeah.
Everything is storytelling. It all depends on what story you believe, right? The great Norm Macdonald had a great line where he goes, I was reading a history book last week, and it turns out in every major war throughout history, the good guys won. I mean, what are the odds, right? Now, basically what Norm just said was history is written by the victors. But he said it in a way that had much, much more commanding, impressive, memorable storytelling. And the joke itself is about storytelling as well.
Right.
This is the kind of thing that if you want to get good at this, my advice is to start paying attention to stuff like that and find out what it means for you.
Yeah. And also, while you're practicing and honing and continuing your own craft and storytelling, really watch 1 hour stand-up comedian specials, because Patton Oswalt will teach you a lot about how to tell a good story.
Yeah. Yes.
Additional to that, there are 2 books I could recommend if you learn by reading, and some of us do. Stephen King has a good book on storytelling. Mark Twain has a good book on storytelling and writing. Brad, any other books that you might recommend, or those are the 2 that pop into my mind?
The one that really hit with me was I'd have to look it up. It was a screenwriter that wrote about the hero's journey.
Well, something like Save the Cat or something is
Save
helpful.
the Cat is a good one too. Save the Cat is actually really good.
Because you might be the kind of person for whom outlining and skeletonizing a story, that's a word, skeletonizing a story might be
like a piranha.
Yeah, exactly. Might be helpful to you in order to break it down to its core essence and then build it up. Some people work that way. And something like Save the Cat is good because it tells you, like, look, at this point in the story, you need to have established blankety blank. At that point of the story, you need to have gotten the rising action going, that kind of thing. So that kind of a book can be helpful as well. And like Brad says with sitcoms, you can learn from other mediums and apply it to your storytelling. So Brad does this very well with sitcoms in terms of having an A-B story, balancing them both out, rising action, and then a successful conclusion for both of them. Brad does that really well with his storytelling.
Yeah, and just to put a button on it, the book I was trying to remember is called The Writer's Journey, and it's by Christopher Vogler. And I really got a lot out of that. Yeah. And Save the Cat, which I'm glad you remembered. I really was entranced by Save the Cat.
And then one final thought I will have, if all of this makes you anxious, but you want to practice your writing and improve it for your storytelling, you might be the kind of person that would benefit from daily journaling and just recounting your story of your day to yourself, for yourself, in a non-public way. That daily recounting of how things went.
Yes.
And trying to make it compelling as you write. What a great low stakes way to improve your writing over time. You do that for a couple of years, I guarantee you'll become a better writer.
And I'll guarantee that later on, when you look back at that stuff that you wrote several years ago, you'll have story it's stuff that you can turn into stories, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You will have I always say, I really wish I'd gotten into the habit of keeping a diary, and I suggest it to everybody all the time, because that's all story fodder. And you think you're going to remember it, but you don't. You don't remember half of this stuff.
Yeah, but in general, I think the nice thing about the suggestions we gave today, Brad, with this is one of the most holistic answers we've ever given, because depending on how you learn, you can learn storytelling by reading, by doing, by physically practicing, either in joke telling, storytelling, improv, or by doing the work in cartooning. So there's like 4 or 5 different ways here that you can. And by the way, they all help each other. It's a rising tide that lifts all the boats. So any one of these methods will help the other ones. But the good news is, depending on what kind of personality you are and how you learn, these methods will, one, if not most of these, can be applied to you. Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on ComicLab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics. All right, Brad. Well, we got a huge update for everybody, and this is an update 10 years in the making. 10 years in the making. It's a huge announcement that, ladies and gentlemen, Brad Geiger will be making his stunning reappearance at San Diego Comic-Con 2023, and you are not going to want to miss it.
That's right. After 10 years, I'm coming back to San Diego, and there can't be a better reason than this one. Dave and I are going to be doing a live ComicLab show at Comic-Con. It's going to be absolutely amazing. We got a great time. We've got a great day, and we talked to them about doing a nighttime ComicLab live show, and it's going to be fantastic. So when that fell into place, I'm like, listen, I would fly out to San Diego for that. So I'm coming out. I'm going to be spending a little bit of time at Dave's booth on Friday, I think we decided, for doing a book signing. So if you have anything that you want signed, I'll have some Evil Ink stuff there as well. If you want to pick it up, or if you just want to come by and get a high five and say hello, that's cool too. And Saturday night at 8 o'clock, we're going to be doing ComicLab live at Comic-Con International. It's going to be a fantastic time.
Absolutely. And that Saturday night primetime is fantastic because all the time that you could be taken away from the show floor on a Saturday, nope. It's at night. It's prime time. I love it. And Brad, of course, will be signing at booth 1228. He'll be joining me at that same booth. Yeah. We're going to have 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 ComicLab pins, plus the magnets. You can get sketches from both of us, signatures from both of us, Brad's Evil Ink books, my Sheldon Drive books. You're definitely going to want to join us. If you're not yet got a ticket for San Diego Comic-Con, run, don't walk, and then join us Saturday night, 8 o'clock for ComicLab Live, and come see Brad and myself down at booth 1228.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I got to admit, after not doing Comic-Con for as long as, and I'm telling you, I think the last time I was there was 2012. So it's been 10 years since I've been there. The idea of going back has me kind of giggly. You know, I'm really, and also, I mean, for me, it's the best way. Like, I'm going to go there, help out at your booth for a while, sign on Friday. It's very low impact for me. Like, it's not like doing a show, like I've got to do the whole show for the entire weekend. And that we get to have a ton of fun Saturday night, and then just hanging around with one of my very closest friends for the weekend. I'm super looking forward to it.
It's really going to be fun. So do come out to the show, because this is only the second time, maybe the third time that we've done a live recording of the podcast for a studio audience, and it's going to be a fun one. We'll be taking your questions towards the end of the panel presentation, and that'll be fun. So join us Saturday night, 8 o'clock, San Diego Comic-Con. All right, now, Brad, the other update that I had for everybody this week is that our friend Kevin McShane of Kevin Comics had extended a invitation to join over at BlueSky. And because this is the similar people who started Twitter originally, I've been sort of curious about it. Because you and I have sort of talked about Mastodon in the past, how we like the idea of a non-centralized service, but that Mastodon itself comes with a lot of problems and baggage that doesn't seem to yet gel with audience. We may yet prove it, be proven wrong, but both of us so far feel like Mastodon is not it. It's not where it's going to happen. We've been around long enough with 25 years that we can kind of sense it in the water when a social media thing is going to hit or not. I will say I tried BlueSky and have been sort of just dipping a toe casually in it, you know, and I want to say it has very much the feeling of that first year or two of Twitter, where all your favorite famous people are there and kind of chit-chatting in a way that I can't describe it other than to say people put up guard posts and guardrails around what they said on Twitter because there would be racists or misogynists or weird bots that would attack. And I don't know, I myself stopped sharing some things on Twitter just because people could be terrible there.
Yeah.
BlueSky feel right now anyway. This is not going to be forever. It'll have its own enshittification process. Right now, it's very pleasant. And Neil Gaiman's chatting, and Phil Plate's chatting, and Gail Simone's chatting, and it's all lovely. So if you get an invite, try it out, because I think this one might have some legs in a way that Mastodon doesn't. I don't want to fully commit yet. There's no network effect yet, but there's enough of the people that I want to follow in terms of their creativity, their output, their level of interesting things that they work on. And they're already on the platform when I jumped in, when Kevin extended the invite. So I don't know. I think there might be some legs to BlueSky. Also, the sign-up process is easier, which is Mastodon's Achilles heel.
Doing my taxes was easier than signing up for Mastodon, let's face it. But this was something that you and I said to look out for when we first started talking about possible replacements for Twitter. And that was if everybody was looking for, where are the big names going? And I said, look for that, but also look for, where are the audience members going? Right. And then you're going to see a little push and a little pull. You're going to see a whole bunch of audience members over here. You're going to see a whole bunch of celebrities and big names over there. And they're going to start chasing each other until finally it finds one platform where everybody settles that has all the big names and all the audience. It sounds like this is a pretty good start, at least for BlueSky, in terms of those celebrities and those big names are going to start now to draw some of the audience around. If they're actually engaging there, and again, if they're able to be found, I wouldn't even know, if Neil Gaiman is on Mastodon. He probably is, but who knows? I wouldn't even know how to begin to find him. But that's a good start for BlueSky. I have not gotten an invite yet. To
be fair, I want to say this for our friendship with Kevin.
Yes,
Kevin texted both of us saying, "Hey, I've got one. Which one of you wants it?"
Yeah.
And he just happened to catch me at the perfect moment. I had the phone in my hand, and I was like, "Me, to heck with Brad." I'm elbowing Brad in the face. Well, no, forget Brad. I want this.
It was the perfect storm because you were still sequestering for COVID, I think, at that point. So you were desperate for any kind of contact or something to do or anything. And so it was, I didn't begrudge you that in a bit. And Kevin said when he gets another one, he's going to be shooting it my way. So I am anxious to try it out. But so far, I guess it's a pretty good start for BlueSky.
Well, and listen, as I said previously, Twitter had a lot of problems. But if you remember from that one episode where I was really despondent about Musk buying out Twitter, I liked a lot of what Twitter offered me, which was the friendship, the community, the contact with people that I love and the people that I find interesting, the ability to link out in a way that was not, I didn't have to jump through any payment hoops or I was governed by how things would work. Traditional Twitter, I really liked, and BlueSky has a lot of that feeling. I don't know yet if it's going to go, but I want to say, people get angry at me and perhaps Brad too, that we keep poo-pooing Mastodon. And I want to, you got to believe in it for it to work, Brad and Dave. You got to put your oomph behind it, and that will help it push off. I just want to tell you that we've been around 25 years online, and you get a sense for what's going to go and what's not going to go. So yes, you could get upset with us that we're saying Mastodon is not it, but I hope you know that we're not saying it in anything other than good faith, which is we're trying to say, don't waste your time on this. Don't put a lot of effort trying to build it. We can tell that this is not going to be it. And that's where it's coming from. It's not, it literally is not out of any ill will. It's out of trying to save you time. Cause I spent my years trying to build up audiences on Vine or on LiveJournal or on Tumblr, only to find them all go, you know what I mean? And so take it from two people that have been, this is not their first rodeo, that it doesn't feel to us like Mastodon is it. And
we get it that you enjoy it, and we're not telling you not to enjoy it. But our job here is to tell you how best to navigate your business. And I would not be suggesting putting a whole lot of steam behind it at this point. But regardless of how you feel about that, let's also come back to BlueSky in just a moment, because BlueSky also has the advantage of timing. And here's what I'm talking about. Blue Sky is just starting to crest right now. We're recording this show in early June. So Blue Sky is really starting to gain momentum now, right? When people like Dave and I are finally starting to get invites, that it's they've like gone past the bigs.
People. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But what else is happening right now? Well, Reddit is just about ready to absolutely crash because two things. They're clamping down on third-party apps, which was a big part of the ecosystem for Reddit, and they're going to make people pay for using a third-party app and all this other stuff as they're going towards their stock market. As they start to, it's an IPO. They're going to be offered, right?
Yep.
So as they're approaching the IPO, they're doing this with the third-party apps, and also we're getting a lot of indications that they're going to pull a Tumblr and crack down on NSFW content. Reddit was a huge place. I'm already thinking about it in past tense. This is how I'm so convinced it's just going to go away. Reddit is probably going to get rid of NSFW content, and we've already seen exactly what happens with that with Tumblr. Tumblr is not out of all the stuff we're talking about, right? With social media, and we made jokes like, "Hey, nobody's even taking Facebook as a serious replacement." Even Facebook got mentioned more often than Tumblr. All of those conversations. Tumblr, you might as well talk about LiveJournal before you talk about Tumblr. But Reddit is gonna follow the same exact path. So, but be that as it may, it's happening at exactly the same time as Twitter is getting this big surge, right? Right. And of course, Twitter. I'm sorry,
not Twitter.
Blue Sky. It's Reddit is going to tank at the same time. Blue Sky is having a big surge, and there's also a lot of other. We haven't talked about Elon Musk and Twitter for a while, but there's a whole bunch of extra things that is continuing to weigh that company down. I don't know whether they've paid their rent yet, let alone all the other problems that they're having. The thing that might put Blue Sky over is that this is all forming on the horizon as a perfect storm, that as Reddit tanks and Twitter continues to go down the hill, Blue Sky is starting to crest.
Yeah. And don't think, by the way, as we say this, that we're naive to the problems that the people behind Blue Sky or that Blue Sky as a format in general have. We see it. But it's kind of the work with what you got attitude that Brad and I have advocated with Twitter. Like, I currently hate Twitter. If Brad were to poke me with a stick, I would say, like, yeah, I'm leaving. I don't want to do it anymore. But I will tell you that we have maintained a sort of what's the word I'm looking for here, Brad? Of like
pragmatic.
Pragmatic. Thank you. God, I couldn't remember the word pragmatic. Look at your genius friend over here.
You're pragmatic over there.
A pragmatic approach that, even though I personally would like to leave Twitter, and it's getting pretty strong now. It's no longer like a casual, I'm not happy there anymore. Now it's more stronger. Like, I'm really not enjoying it. The pragmatic side of me tells me, look, Dave, you've got thousands of people that still love your little corner of Twitter. You've built them up over a decade. Ride it until he crashes that thing into the ground. And then if it's not Reddit, it's going to be Blue Sky. If it's not Blue Sky, it'll be some other third thing. But take a pragmatic approach about it, because I can't control either the billionaires or the Fortune 500 companies that are going to own these social media companies. They're all going to be problematic in their own way. So I'm trying to take a pragmatic, good for me and good for my audience sort of approach to using Twitter, to using Blue Sky, and to using Reddit, as they all enter different phases of their own initial flourishing and then slow enshittification down to an IPO.
Absolutely. So, Dave, let's go back to Patreon questions. This one coming in from JC, who says, you got to help me out. He says, I got a Discord channel connected to my Patreon, thinking that it would drive engagement. It's a place of quiet solitude where backers come to watch paint peel. He says, the silence is disturbed only by the soft rolling of the occasional tumbleweed. Nothing seems to move the needle. What should I do, comic uncles? What should I do? So JC is saying, hey, he set up Discord, connected it to Patreon, and he was hoping that it would drive engagement. And he could have a place where he could really foster community among his fans, and nobody's engaging. Nobody's saying anything. Do we have any advice for him?
Well, I will say this I will give you specific ways that you can encourage and positively reinforce a community and kind of nudge people along towards sharing with one another. I will give you that. But I want to start off by saying that not every comics communities are alike. Brad and I both have ostensibly successful Patreons with Drive and Evil Inc., right? But they're very different crowds, and they react and act with one another in very different ways. The same is true with Sheldon. Sheldon is very different from Drive in that with loving but not very strong nudging, I can get huge conversations going with Drive, right? Yeah. Huge conversations, like 30, 40 posts easy on some of the pages. Sheldon, I don't know that I could get people to even log in, never mind post over on Patreon. Just very different audiences. And I think Brad is probably more towards the latter with Evil Inc. if I'm judging his audience right on Patreon. But they continue to come back month after month for Brad. They love the Patreon. They love what they get out of it. But they don't go there for conversation per se, right? And so not every comic is going to generate an audience that's chatty Cathy all the time, and that's okay. So that's what I want to lead in. But now, Brad, what are specific bits of advice we could give them if they wanted to try to nudge and positively reinforce an audience to talking more?
Yeah, I've got a few thoughts on this. And one, I've been meaning to bring this up on ProTips, and I will at some point because I think it deserves a little bit of a deep dive. But this is one reason that I advocate becoming a Patreon backer of other people, and not necessarily just for entertainment or for, hey, I like what this person is doing, but because it's great research. All right. So right now I'm a Patreon backer of, I think, 17 different Patreon people who are doing Patreon.
Are you really?
And that includes, I just counted 17, and some of them are doing things that are similar to what I'm doing. Some of them are doing the same kind of comics that I'm doing, but they're doing it in a very different way. Some of them are doing audio. Some of them are doing like completely different things. Some of them are writers. Some of them are photographers. I'm following a whole bunch of different people. All right, with the idea of it's research. It's research. Right. I want to see how they're posting, what they're posting, and again, I'll go into detail on this on ProTips because it deserves its own topic. But this is one of the reasons I suggest being a backer of other people on Patreon so you can see how they handle their Discord. And if you come to the Evil Inc. Discord, you're going to see right off the bat that I have a very similar problem with this. It's taken a long time. It's finally kind of gotten up to a little bit of level of daily and weekly conversations and discussions, but it took me a long time to foster that. And so I'll tell you some of the things that have been on my mind as I was walking down that path. And the first thing is the most obvious thing. The best way to foster engagement and conversation is to start a conversation. You've got to be the leader there. You've got to start a conversation. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hey, I'm already doing my comic. I'm already doing social media. I don't want to spend hours a day also trying to get conversations started on Discord, right? I get that. Here's the thing. Take a step back for a second and realize that you've got kind of a perfect situation, because if you're doing social media right, in my opinion, this is my opinion, if you're doing social media right, all of this conversation starting stuff that you're doing, that we're talking about, is one of the C's of the 4 C's of social media. Right. You're
right.
So you should be trying to start conversations. You should be engaging on social media. The biggest mistake we make as cartoonists is thinking that all we got to do is post our comic and post a link to our Patreon. It goes beyond that. Social media is social. So here's what I suggest. I don't want you to reinvent the wheel. I don't want you to do all that. You've been doing social media right, or hopefully you can start today. Go back into your past feed, go back a month or so. Because remember, nobody remembers anything on social media past the 2-week mark. Go back to your old social media posts. Find times when you successfully started a conversation. Find topics that came up that were a good starter on your social media and recycle them. Bring them back to Discord, right?
Right.
Maybe put a fresh coat of paint on them, put a little zhuzh on them, put a little spin on them, or just copy paste them like I do every now and again, and see how you can start a conversation all over again on Discord. Will some of your fans recognize it? Yeah, maybe. Does it matter? No. It absolutely doesn't matter. Another big mistake that we all make on social media, thinking we can only post something once. Right? We think, I posted it. I can't post it again. The algorithm is making sure that a mere small percentage of the people are going to see what you posted. And you're worried about posting the same thing twice? Get over yourself. Take that old stuff, recycle it on Discord. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I will say this, Brad touched on this too, and I want to touch on it in my own way, which is positively reinforcing engagement and communication and helpfulness and funniness in your moderated discus or in your Patreon forums or whatever you want to do. That goes a long way to letting people know the kind of behavior you want to see and what you want to see more of. And so I have gone so far as when a reader asks a question or has, I don't know, something that's troubling them in Drive or a story, and another reader goes out of their way to provide a bunch of links, shares a map from the story, tells the backstory, explains like I'm 5 of why this thing's happening in the story, but the reader did it on their own. I will go out of the way to publicly say on the forum, first of all, 10,000 Drive points to you for doing all that work. That's great. And then I'll say something like, let me send you a sketch. Email me your address, right? Everyone else on that forum sees that not only am I encouraging kindness and helpfulness and going out of your way to be the community member, that I'm also positively reinforcing, like, if I do this, maybe Dave will send me a sketch, or maybe, right? And so it's all the things you want in your Patreon. You're giving the people that truly support you more stuff. You are encouraging one another to help make that community more engaging, and you're fostering a sense of kindness and fun and, hey, we're all in this together kind of a spirit. That goes a long way. And I'll do that with jokes too. If somebody really makes a joke that's as funny or funnier than the punchline that I had on the page, I reward it. I don't grind my teeth. I go, oh my God, that's amazing. I wish I'd done that. 10,000 Drive points to you. I try to gamify it a little bit, by the way, with these unnecessary points that don't mean anything. So it's like 10 points for Gryffindor. But that kind of fun of like making it unnecessarily gamified can make a forum really a pleasant place to go. Right. And so it also makes it more fun for you as a cartoonist, right? You're injecting a little more fun into what is basically moderating and editorializing people's comments. Well, now you're making it fun for yourself.
Remember, these are your super fans. These are people who are paying money to have access to you, and you're giving them that access on Patreon. But if you want to bring Discord up, you can make this a place. Discord can be a place that you're giving them that extra access as well. This is where you can go into a little bit of backstory or behind the scenes stuff that you haven't posted on Patreon, or you can have the conversations that aren't happening elsewhere. Giving them access, letting them have direct access to you is a great way of reinforcing that this is a special place where special things happen. And then remember, then your next step is the next time you're doing a Patreon post or next time you're on social media, you can say, in fact, I did this just the other day. Patreon came out with a redesign. They're redesigning the creator page, and there's good news and there's bad news. And I went out on Twitter and I basically, that was the tweet. I said, Patreon just redesigned their creators page. There's good news and there's bad news. And we're talking about it right now in the ComicLab Discord. And then I did a brief little post. I had visuals. Here's what I'm talking about. I did screen grabs. Here's what you're going to need to know. Here's how you can navigate it. All took place on the ComicLab Discord. And I made sure that people outside knew that this is what goes on the ComicLab Discord.
Absolutely. And reinforcing that exact same point, I do the same with Drive, which is I no longer have a forum on Drive itself, which we've talked about in the past shows, was a great idea from Brad, just getting rid of the forums for every Tom, Dick, and Harry, because a lot of those people are just looking to pick a fight or whatever. Right. So I limit the conversation to just the super fans, but I make sure to share and link, as Brad just did with ComicLab, that, hey, the conversation and the fan theories right now are jumping over on Patreon. Here's the link. You got to get in on this. So I blog that, I'll tweet that, all that sort of stuff. And yes, there's a subreddit for Drive, but for the most part, I really try to drive engagement and comments and people's fan theories onto that Patreon post. Yeah, I like Brad did with ComicLab, because it lets people know that that's a destination and that things are happening there. So it's sort of self-reinforcing when they actually get there.
Here's another thing that I try to do, and that is to lead by example. I've got a couple special channels where people can post things that they like. Which is, again, another C. That's curation of social media. Posting things that they like. Here's something I'm interested in. Here's this great illustration I found. Here's a great animation. And I am constantly on the lookout for stuff that I can put in those channels. I lead by example. Here's the sorts of things that you are welcome to do here. And after a little while, I've got a few of them that caught on, and they're taking over for me, and they're posting things and they're keeping things going. And of course, the more stuff that happens there, that's just content that keeps people happy, keeps them coming back. So they're participating. But it took me months and months, and maybe even years in some cases, of leading by example.
Yeah. Leading by example is really important one. And because that also means gentle hand slapping when someone gets out of turn. And that's not going to happen so much with your super fans. But once or twice on Patreon, I've had to gently be like, no, we don't talk to one another that way here. Or we don't. And, I don't talk to them like a 5-year-old, but you gently nudge them back towards, no, this is a place of kindness. This is a place of having fun. This is a place to let your guard down. And for those reasons, we do not in any way attack one another or go after one another. If anything, have fun with ideas, not attacking the people behind them. So, as Brad says, leading by example is a key part.
And the final thought I'm going to leave you with is Discord games. There's a bunch of games that you can play on Discord. There's word games, image games, all this other kind of stuff. That it is kind of fun. I know one person that does audio. That there's an entire channel. I lost count. Maybe a couple dozen games that are always going on at any one time in these different channels. You can experiment with those as well, and I think you can find a bunch of those with a quick search on your favorite search engine. To find a bunch of games that you can play on Discord. Basically, again, you're going to find if for this audio person, it works great for their audience. They love it. It's always going on, always hell's a popping over there. My folks, I don't think they would get into it too much. Your folks, maybe you got to find the right thing or the right activity to do. But you can also institute games on your Discord channel.
Yeah, and I will reinforce one final thought that Brad has already said, but I think it's worth mentioning again. With Patreon and with forums, one of the most powerful things you can do is give more of you. That's what they're coming for.
Yes.
So whether it's quick asides of how hey, this comic was particularly fun to draw because of blankety blank, or the reason this story came about this way was because I recently had this experience with blankety blank, or any little insights, tidbits, sneak peeks behind the scenes, little glimpses as to how you create. Just in terms of 1 or 2 sentences, it doesn't have to be a lot. That's what they're paying for. Yes. So that starts conversations. I guarantee sharing those on a regular basis will start conversations. They want more of you.
Yeah. And Unfortunately, Dave, our listeners want less of us because we've been going at this for an hour and they're saying, all right, we've heard enough. It's time for you to bring this thing to a close. And that means it's time for me to say that you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
There's like a small trainer leaning over the ropes, throwing the towel going, you've done enough, Rocky. Oh, Rocky,
right.
You've done enough.
That's right.
Your hosts have been my friend Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com.
And my friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode. And don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Spotify, where we are burning up those podcast charts.
And Comic Lab is made possible by your continuing support on patreon.com/comiclab. So do join us, and I'll say it twice, patreon.com/comiclab. So, Brad, speaking of trying too hard, one of the things that I'm disappointed with the communities of BlueSky and Mastodon and a couple other places is they're all trying to recreate the word tweet. Like Twitter was a bird and the bird tweeted, right? Like there was a sort of logic to that, right? It kind of flowed and it was fun to do, so it took off. But they're all trying to recreate the word tweet. And so with Mastodon, you have an elephantine creature, and so they're calling it a toot, not a tweet. Which just also, by the way, it sounds like he had one serving too many of that Texas chili at the barbecue, right?
Yeah.
But,
I tooted.
And then with with BlueSky, you've got they skeeted, not tweeted, which also sounds like, I don't know. It sounds like maybe they also had too much of the chili at the Texas cook-off. Oh no, I skeeted in my pants.
I skeeted once, and it was not a pleasurable experience.
But like a little bit, it's a community trying too hard to recreate the magic of what was a naturally flowing and occurring word, you know?
Well, it's like that. It's like that scene in Annie Hall where he's trying to recreate those moments from his previous relationship, right? And it's like, oh, we'll make the lobster in the kitchen and it'll be great and we'll laugh and it's never really possible to recreate a past love. It was a magic thing, and the next thing is just going to have its own magic.
Yeah, you're right, though. It is a little bit like Bill Murray in the second act of Groundhog Day, where he's trying to recreate the one day where he fell in love or the one day and he's just desperately going through the motions. Boy, humans just want to try to recreate that magic, don't we?
Yep. Once it happens once, we want to try and make it happen over. And there's also a little bit of this. You remember in 5th grade where that kid came up and said, yeah, my name is Chester, but you can call me Long John. And it's like, Chester, nobody's going to call you Long John. Yeah, now everybody calls me Long John. Chester, I've known you since 1st grade, and nobody calls you Long John. Yeah, but that's my nickname now. You can't make a nickname happen. You can't make that happen. It can only happen organically.
And that's why I say, from me, Dave Kellett in Los Angeles, and my friend Scoot Duder in Philadelphia, we'll see you next week.